Hey guys, welcome back. For today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm palette. This is like the slightly warmer version of the I Need a Nude palette. They have been marketed together as like sister palettes. This one is warmer in a like a peachier, slightly more reddish direction, and not so much like an orangey yellow direction. The palette retails for $69 and it contains 15 shades in various finishes. It's their midi size palette, so they do have some larger ones and some mini size, but this is their medium size and most popular format. It has the holes in the back so you can pop the shades out if you would like and rearrange if you have multiple palettes. There is a large mirror on the inside and it does close magnetically. 7 of the shades are mattes and 6 of those are creamy powder mattes, which are just true powder mattes. Creamy is just referring to the fact that they are not dry. They're just kind of like a nice buttery formula. One of those mattes is a new formula called Slip Cream, and that is the shade Flash Over in the bottom right. To me, this one feels like a powder. It doesn't feel like a cream, but it has a super silky feel to the touch, and it blends out on the eye kind of like a cream, so I get a very smooth blend out of it. And one thing that's different is it is very pigmented, unlike the older formula that was, I think it was called cream powder in some of the older palettes. This one is definitely different than that. And then there are 8 shimmers in here in various finishes. There are technically 5 finishes in here, but I will kind of describe each of them. First off, there are 2 metallics. These ones are shimmers that are generally less reflective and less sparkly. From the palettes that I've had in the past, that's what I've gotten out of those. They give off a softer sheen that isn't quite as shiny. And there are 2 sparkling foiled shades. This is a little bit of a newer formula, and they have been a mixture of fine shimmer and larger sparkle and a highly foiled finish, supposedly. They are generally more shiny than the metallics. They aren't always necessarily very foiled or mirror-like in shine, but they do give off more of a reflection. The shade Push definitely follows this description, but the shade Elm on the left, it doesn't really seem like a sparkling foil to me. It definitely reminds me more of a metallic. It's not as reflective, and I don't see any large sparkle in that shade at all. There are 2 metal glosses. Metal glosses are a new formula that is released in this palette. Homey is the shiniest of the 2 that are in here, and Snug is also fairly shiny, but not quite as much. This formula, I think, is supposed to be more reflective than the sparkling foileds. Homey for sure is. Snug is kind of in the range of a sparkling foiled, I would say. It's not super different. They both feel creamier to the touch than the other shimmers in the palette. They almost glide on liquid-like. They transfer from my brush to my skin super easily. They are not liquids, though. They are definitely powders. But I feel like they probably have more emollient ingredients in them just based on the way they feel and the way they transfer from my finger or my brush to my skin. There's one duochrome shade, that is the shade Dynamism in the bottom row. And when I say duochrome, it's not necessarily a shifty shade. If I really scrutinize this shade and I look at it super close, it does have a shift, but it is the most difficult shift to detect. It's really, you don't notice it hardly at all. But I will say that because the sparkles are like a opposing color to the background shimmer, that gives it a duochrome appearance. So the shimmer is like a bronze, like a warm bronze, and the sparkles are a kind of a brighter green, so it does give you that dimension when you're looking at it straight on. And the final finish is multi-chrome. There is one multi-chrome shade in this palette. It is Phenomena in the top row. This one is a peachy pink to green shift. I mainly notice either the peachy pink or the green. It's supposed to have 3 different shades, but I don't really notice 3. Peachy pink is the main thing I see, and green is like an accent if I have the light shining just right from the side. This one is slightly sheerer. It applies best if I use my finger to pat it on. If I use a brush, it kind of gathers in flakes or in clumps on the lid, and so I end up with areas that I don't get enough color. It's definitely the smoothest, most even, most reflective, best color payoff if applied with a fingertip. Next up, I want to just show you a few comparison palettes side by side with this one so you can see where it lies on the warmth spectrum. So I have the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, which is deeper and more orangey. The I Need a Nude palette, which is a little bit more taupey gray pink. The Golden palette, which is more yellow toned, but kind of a subtle yellow tone. I have the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette, which is mostly cool toned. There's a little bit of warmth in there, but it's mostly cool. The Too Faced The Natural Nudes, which is fairly neutral, but kind of skews heavily in the reddish pink direction. And the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 3 palette, which is supposed to have a balance of warm and cool tones, but overall I find it fairly warm, except for maybe 2 shades in there. And I have also 2 small palettes just to kind of show you that this palette is not super warm. It's only slightly warmer than like a true neutral palette. So on the top, I have a Huda Beauty Creamy Obsessions palette, the neutral brown one. This one to me is a very slightly warm but still true neutral palette. And the color shifter, the Sephora color shifter palette in Infinite Nude, which is kind of the same deal. So this palette is only a bit warmer than that. So if you are scared of this because you think it might be too warm, but you have a warm undertone, it's probably going to work just fine for you. And then last but not least, I have the ColourPop Bare Necessities palette and the ColourPop Rock Candy palette. All right, guys, almost done. These are all of the looks that I did with this palette. For the most part, fallout was minimal from all the shimmers except for the duochrome. That one had the most, but still wasn't bad. Most of the mattes performed well. Only one was very slightly patchy, the shade Soft Spot, but still very usable, still very good quality shadow. And wear time in general was a little short for me. Usually with Natasha Denona palettes, I get pretty good wear time even without a primer, but I was getting a little bit less wear time, kind of averaging around 5 hours without primer, but getting a full like 8 to 9 hours with primer. So overall, still decent quality. If you like the color story and you think it'll work out for you, I do still recommend it. I think it's a nice everyday neutral palette. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.